Boker Tov, Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Glad that you're here. Glad to be with you this morning. I welcome you to the Aliyah Day, special day today. On the Jewish calendar, on this day, the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, and as a result, the day of his release was and is considered like a Rosh Hashanah of the Hasidim throughout history. So it's a special kind of like special Purim today, special holiday as it were today. And so one of the customs is that at this time we begin, or the customs among some Hasidim anyway, is to begin studying the Tanya, which is a great work. I enjoy studying the Tanya. It's very deep Kabbalistic insights. And the Alter Rebbe was known for having brought down what's referred to as the inner soul of the Torah, which is really interesting. What does that mean exactly? Well, in the Tanya, it's taught by the Alter Rebbe that the Torah has a body and a soul. The body includes the physical aspects of the Torah, which would include like halakha, Mishnah, Talmud, legal details, Agada, the physical performance of the mitzvot and so forth. Those referred to a lot of times as external garments or the outer dimension. The inner soul of the Torah is Kabbalah, is divine wisdom, is the Ein Sof, the driving force of the Torah. You could kind of say it's like the Shekinah, if you will, the divine light of the Torah, that which motivates the Torah. Isn't this interesting? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The Torah has a body and a soul, huh? Who would have thought? It's the divine wisdom. So the Shekinah is therefore the inner Torah, the inner soul, if you will, of the Torah. So as we're getting into this time frame, today we are experiencing a Rosh Hashanah, if you will, and Rosh Hashanah New, as we begin to study the inner dimensions of the Torah and remember the release of the Alter Rebbe, who had been imprisoned for false beliefs. Also, our friends Yochanan and Tirza are presently listening to the Aliyah this morning in Paris, France, in the airport as they're making their way back to South Africa. So we miss them. We are so glad that they came, so glad to have gotten to know them, and wish them great travels as they're listening to me and while they sit in France, which is somewhat fitting, I think. But listen, I wanted to shout out to those of you who watch this program. Every day on the Aliyah Day, we have 60, 70, sometimes as many as 80 or 90 people who watch the Aliyah Day live. And then there are other people, of course, who cannot watch live for various reasons, and they come back and watch it later. And so by the 24 hours later, there are 300 or 400 views on the Aliyah. And of course, that may represent 300 or 400 people, but it also could represent 500 or 600 or 700 people, because sometimes, very often, people who watch the Aliyah Day or any other program that we give, sometimes it's 2 people watching the same link, 3 people watching the same link. So sometimes those numbers get exponential. So as an example, like on Shabbat, a lot of times on Shabbat, we'll have upwards of 100 people watching live. But really, that could be 300 or 400 people for this very same reason I just mentioned. And so we live in a very cyber world where a lot of people that we watch or listen to are teachers or whatever, commentators, whoever they may be. These are people that we see on TV. And nowadays TV has been expanded from the literal television to YouTube and other venues, X, Facebook, whatever. Sometimes people do watch me on TV. Literally, they cast me to the television. But in any case, the point I'm trying to make is that you see me here, and you see some of the other people of Lapid Judaism here on the big screen, so to speak. And you may wonder, if we're real, or how should I say, what we're actually like. What are we really like behind the scenes? You know, when we're sitting around drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, or going to and fro, or walking around town, you know, what are we like really behind, you know, closed doors? Some people may wonder, and it's you know, there's nothing wrong with wondering that. It's you know, in other words, is this a show? Are we really who we are? Do we really mean what we say, and what have you? And there have been people who have come here to spend time with us, to meet us. Lately, it's been Yochanan and Tirzah. Before that, it was Leah from Great Britain. We've had Levi and his family come. We've had Leah and Shmuel who've come a few times. Gianna, who comes here just every year and spends a considerable amount of time. Yonina has been here. Who else? I don't want to forget anybody who has traveled here. But we've had a great number of people who have come and spent time with us and gotten to know us in different ways. Greg Kroon is going to be coming here, I think, today or tomorrow or what have you. So he will be here soon. And then, you know, Moshe, or otherwise known as Carmelo from Italy. He came here a few years ago and spent several weeks with us. And there have been so many people who've come, and I feel like I'm forgetting people. I know I have. Roy, yes, Roy has come. You and your wife came, Roy, and spent time with us. And so my point to those of you, and this is, I just wanted to say this. I thought about this morning. Again, there are many people who watch this program, the Aliyah, the Shabbat, and so forth, and you don't comment, you don't say anything, and there's reasons why you don't, and that's perfectly fine. And you may wonder, golly, you know, I love the message. I like Rabbi seems like a cool guy. But I just wonder, you know, when they turn the camera off, is this all phony? And I would just encourage you to reach out to these people who've come and talk to them, because I do think it's important, because here at Lapid Judaism, we're not just talking about presenting ideas, and ideas is not the right word. I guess I should say presenting truth, presenting the reality, but we're also about building relationships and building a community and building a movement, something that you can sink your proverbial teeth into, that your children and grandchildren can grow up in. And therefore, it's important for us to get to know you. And that's one of the reasons why I say hello to everybody in the morning and try my best. And Keturah does the same, the Zakins do the same, others do likewise. We do our best to connect and to talk and to reach out to people so that they feel seen and recognized, because you are seen. But in any case, the main thing I was trying to say is that it just occurred to me that some people don't get the benefit of saying, I wonder what Rabbi and Rebbetzin are like when we're sitting down at a restaurant, or, you know, when we're taking a tour of a museum and just checking things out. What are they like? You know, that type of thing. And so, yeah, we had the opportunity to take Yochanan and Tirzah around Texas a little bit of a road trip. And it was fun just to give them a chance, because they're out of country, to see the Republic of Texas. And so it was just fun. And so I just want to tell you that if you're curious, and you should be curious, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being curious, to reach out to some of these folks and say, hey, you went down there. Is Rabbi Griffin a nutcase, or is he like, okay? Ask. Anyway, I hope that's beneficial to all of you. Today we'll be talking about the betrayal of Joseph in specific detail, as they sell him to the Ishmaelites, looking at some insights related to this and seeing what we can glean from it, and how we can understand the story, and how it points us to the Messiah, specifically, right? We're going to dive into that. Before we do that, I'm going to say good morning. Aliyah Smith is asking a profound question here, and it's something that everybody has been wanting to know. Leah, I can't tell you how many times people ask me this question. What is Rabbi's coffee order? What is my coffee order? Well, I have two orders, right? No, 9 times out of 10, if I'm drinking coffee just at home and sometimes, out and about, I drink coffee black. No cream, no sugar, just black. Very often, the Zakins and I will go to a particular coffee place and we'll just sit down and have a cup of coffee. And I try to kind of be more sophisticated when I have that official coffee time. So I order a cappuccino. No sugar, just frothy milk cappuccino. And there I feel more elevated. But otherwise, it's just black. So there's the Rebbetzin. She says black coffee. So there you go. It's just black. There's no frills, no thrills. If you want an exciting coffee order, ask Zakin Yagal. His is exciting. Mine is just, yeah. Good morning, Yonina. Good to see you this morning. Formerly from Georgia. Glad you're here. Good morning, Donna. Good morning, Hepzibah. Chris and Crystal. Good morning, Elisheva. Boker Tov to you, Sergio. Glad to see you, Gingrich. Good morning, Shoshana Brenner. Hope you and Zakin. There's Zakin Yagal. Good morning, Zakin Yagal. Good morning. Oh, there's Johan. Yes. Johan and Tirza. We love you guys. Hope you're having a good time in the French airport. Good morning to, let's see, Amy Lynn. Good morning to you. Jubilee, Boker Tov. Let's see. Good morning to Jubilee and Samuel. Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Denise and Kim Bament. Boker Tov. Let's see who else we have here. Good morning, Owen. Boker Tov to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Good morning, Owen. Hope life in Las Vegas is treating you well. There's a lot of kosher restaurants in Las Vegas, and I would like to go to Las Vegas only because of the restaurants. We plan our trips, our vacations, a lot of times around where we can eat. Good morning, Lantern Signals. And let's see. Sarah, hope you and Shane are doing great. Good morning, Roy. Boker Tov to you and your precious wife. Good morning, Chad. And yes, of course, good morning, Leah. Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Kara. Let's see. Good morning, Yaakov, the Brazilian guy. Welcome aboard from Brazil. My Portuguese is a little rusty. Good morning, Nellie Grace. Cactus Annie, good morning to you. Good morning, Tove. Jeremiah, Boker Tov. Ma Perkins, Boker Tov to you. Good morning, Matthew. Good to see you, Micaiah. And there's Johanna Leah from Great Britain. Boker Tov to you, madam. Good morning, Grace, also from Great Britain. Hello to you. Hello. Hello from Great Britain. So glad you're here. Good morning to Kayla and Rob. Good to see you this morning, Kayla and Rob. Hope you and the fam are doing great. Flower Fly, Boker Tov to you. Glad you're here. Welcome aboard. Good morning, Thelma. And Meatball, Boker Tov to you. There's the Rebbetzin, the little butterfly. Let's see. Who else do we have? Did I miss anybody yet? Brenda Jones, Boker Tov. Joe Plunkett from Fishersville, Virginia. Welcome aboard to you, sir. And who else do we have? Christon. Bonjour, Christon. Let's see. Heather Wilson, hope you and Zachary are doing great, being blessed. Anna Smith, Boker Tov to you. Glad you're here. She drinks straight coffee from the grounds. I like that. I like cinnamon too, by the way. Just as a side note, in case you're wondering. That's has just you're just sitting around, so you're wondering, I wonder what type of spice Rabbi likes. Well, cinnamon would be one of them. Alexander Boker Tov to you. I also eat my food very, very spicy. That's another side note. In case you're wondering, does this mean anything to you guys? I don't know if you really care. But Shmuel likes black coffee. That's great. You like foo-foo coffee. Most ladies do. Rebbetzin likes to have a little bit of coffee with her cream. That is absolutely true. She has a little bit of coffee with her cream. She has coffee flavored cream, basically. How's that goes down? All right. So let us look at this the insights rather. Let's go back to the third Aliyah. Let me find where we left off. Here it is. And it says here in verse 23, Genesis chapter 37 and verse 23 is where the third Aliyah begins. It says, and so it was, when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the fine woolen tunic that was on him. They took him, cast him into the pit. The pit was empty, and no water was in it. They sat to eat food. They raised their eyes, and they saw, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, their camels bearing spices, balsam, and lotus, on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what gain will there be if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. But let our hand not be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. His brothers agreed. Midianite men, traders, passed by. They drew Joseph up and lifted him up out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Then they brought Joseph to Egypt. Now, we're going to go walk through this in an insight from Mammal Wes, but I want you to pay attention to the fact that, because we're going to put some numbers together here. Joseph ends up getting sold 5 different times on his way to Egypt. And if you'll notice, it says the Midianite men, traders, passed by. They drew Joseph up out of the pit, and they sold him to the Ishmaelites. So it's really interesting. It's like a pattern being developed here, several patterns. One of them is that the brothers don't really want to kill him. So what do? They hand him over to the Gentiles. And then the Gentiles hand him over to other Gentiles who end up basically, for all intents and purposes, killing him. Being sold into slavery was essentially tantamount to death. So we have right off the bat, you have the Midianites who sell him to the Ishmaelites. Okay. And it says they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. We know that the Messiah was sold for what? 30 pieces of silver. But we're going to come back to that in a second. So it says, then they brought Joseph to Egypt. Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he rent his garments. Returning to his brothers, he said, the boy is gone, and where can I go? They took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a goatling, and dipped the tunic in the blood. They dispatched the fine woolen tunic, and they brought it to their father and said, we found this. Identify, if you please. Is this your son's tunic or not? He recognized it and said, my son's tunic, a savage beast devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to bits. Then Jacob rent his garments and put sackcloth on his loins. He mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to comfort himself and said, for I will go down to the grave mourning for my son. And his father bewailed him. Now the Midianites had sold him to Egypt, to Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh, the chamberlain of the butchers. And that is the entirety of the third Aliyah. So I want to begin by looking at the Chumash, and it says that they sold Joseph and then they sat down to eat. And it says here, this proves that they had a clear conscience. Otherwise, they would not have seated themselves comfortably to eat with the entreaties of their brother echoing in their ears. And this is something we have to understand, is that these brothers who betrayed Joseph, they thought they were doing the right thing. To them, they had an absolutely clear conscience to the point that they could just sit down and eat a meal. Meanwhile, their brother is inside a pit that has snakes and scorpions in it, and he's crying and calling out for help and asking them to, have mercy or whatever he's saying, and they're just enjoying lunch. But it says here also in the Keil Tumash, nevertheless, though God is patient, he eventually exacts punishment. You sold your brother and then sat down to eat. said Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So it says, there will yet come a time that your descendants will be sold in the midst of a feast. And so it was many centuries later that in Shushan, when the king and Haman sat down to drink, in Esther 3:15, after plotting the extermination of the Jews, this comes from Midrash Tehillim, chapter 10. So we see here this cell of Joseph, rather. What's interesting is there's so many things that connect in the scriptures, and particularly, interestingly, connect to the festival of Purim, which we've talked about before in great detail. But Purim is kind of intertwined throughout the entire year. But we can see here that the whole issue of Purim, the whole reason that we have Purim, the whole reason that Haman was allowed to rise up, had to do with this cell of Joseph. Now, I want to mention another insight here from the from the Chumash, which is really, I think, instructive, because a lot of people naturally will say, well, the Jews betrayed Messiah. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. On the one hand, they say, well, the Messiah came to die. His mission was to come to die. And so he was betrayed by his brothers, and they ostensibly put him to death. And then everybody says, well, golly, that was terrible. Well, wait a minute. He came to die. In other words, were the Jewish people, were we fulfilling God's will or not? See, that's something you have to think about. Okay. Well, the other thing, too, is that a lot of people presume, and this is kind of the Gentile way of thinking, the non-Jewish way of thinking, that only evil people do evil things. And that's not necessarily true at all. In fact, the Messiah said that the religious Jews of his era, which were the Pharisees, you realize that, well, the Essenes were religious, but they were like a cult, segregated cult. So they kind of don't count, because people don't understand the Essenes lived in a compound, and they didn't really leave the compound. It's like almost like living, you could say to put it in perspective, they basically lived in a silent monastery type thing. If you ever go to Qumran in Israel, then you'll learn this, right? We've been there several times, and walked through their whole compound. Rebbe and I have videos actually from years back. So long ago, in fact, the video is on the little videotape, like the little camcorder. That's how long ago it was. But yeah, these people, they're religious, yes, but they lived in a little compound all by themselves, and they're really kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of things with respect to Israel's society. So let's just say, in Israeli Jewish functional society of the first century, the only Jews who were really religious were the Pharisees. And the Messiah referred to them as healthy. They're the healthy ones. So people say, well, but it was the Pharisees who turned Messiah over. Well, that's not exactly historically true, but let's just pretend for a moment that it is true. Well, what's the greatest mitzvah? If you really think about it, what's the greatest mitzvah that's ever been done? You want the truth? The greatest mitzvah that's ever been done is betraying the Messiah. You say, what? Yeah, think about it. If we hadn't betrayed the Messiah, then we wouldn't have the Moshiach. We wouldn't have the atonement. We wouldn't have the restoration. Many of you today, if the Messiah had not been, now I'm going to say many of you, all of you who are listening today, if we had not betrayed the Messiah, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't know about HaShem. You wouldn't know about the Torah. You wouldn't be listening to me today if it wasn't for the betrayal of the Messiah by his own people. So the greatest mitzvah that's ever been done is betrayal of the Messiah. We could make this argument about Moses. We could make it about Joseph. We could make it about David as well. And so God chose the righteous ones to perform this mitzvah. It's exactly the opposite of what you've been taught your whole life. You've been taught your whole life that it was the evil Jews, the conspiring Jews who betrayed the Messiah because they're so wicked. No. The wicked ones, ladies and gentlemen, were the Goyim. The wicked ones were the Sadducees. God chose the righteous to perform this mitzvah, and it goes back to the pattern of the brothers betraying Joseph. It was the righteous brothers who delivered the Messiah Joseph into the hands of the Goyim so that he could become the savior of the world, as the Midrash Rabbah calls him. Yes, you say, well, weren't they wrong? This is what they did was wrong? Yes, of course. And it was wrong what they did. And I'm going to read the insight so you understand this a little better. It was, of course, wrong what they did. And yet, it was a mitzvah ultimately. Think of how many lives, spiritual and literal, were saved by Joseph that would not have been saved if these righteous brothers had not done what they did. You see? God chose the righteous Pharisees. He chose the righteous and holy Pharisees to perform the greatest mitzvah the world's ever known, which is betraying their brother so that the world could come to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Crazy, isn't it? You say, weren't they, doesn't God, like somebody said to me, I think just last week, well, you Jews betrayed the Messiah, so your end is everlasting hell and damnation. Oh, really? When does God ever send you to hell for performing a good deed? Good deed? Yeah. Introducing the world to the Moshiach is a good deed, and that was accomplished through betraying him. Let's read the insight. See if it'll give us more clarity. It says the hand of heaven. So the question here by the Chumash is, why were the brothers the ones who made Joseph suffer? Why were his own brothers? Why was this chosen to be this way? It says the hand of heaven was at work in the cell of Joseph. The brothers thought he was a menace to them and to the unity and destiny of the family. They thought that they would kill him, and therefore a dead man cannot reign. They thought that they would make him a slave, and a slave cannot reign. But God thought otherwise. Joseph would be king no matter what they did. The sages teach our father Jacob would have had to descend to Egypt in chains and a collar. So said God, he is my firstborn son. Shall I bring him down there in disgrace? Rather, I will lead his son before him, and he will be forced to descend after him. From Breshit Rabbah 86:2. But if Joseph had to go to Egypt, why did his great and righteous brothers have to be the instrument of his mistreatment? So it says, when people are good, God rewards them by making them the agents of performing good things. And when people are bad, God makes them the agents of bringing about harm. Shabbat 32a. Now, this is an interesting thought. Keep this in mind. When people are good, God rewards them by making them the agents of performing good things. And when people are bad, God makes them the agents of bringing about harm. Was the betrayal of Joseph, and then as a type later, referring to Messiah, Yeshua, was the betrayal of Messiah or Joseph, either way, a good thing? You have to say yes. You have to say yes. Why? Because if we had not betrayed Joseph, he would not have become the Savior. If we had not betrayed Yeshua, he would not have become the Savior, period. Let's put it another way. Did the betrayal of Joseph or Yeshua lead to harm? You have to say no. The betrayal led to good, not harm. Therefore, you have to understand that if that's the case, then God did not use bad people. Because he only uses good people to do good things. He never uses good people to cause harm. This is the point. So incidentally, by the way, just a side note, Messiah came first as the Moshiach ben Yosef, which means in Judaism, the suffering Messiah. And remember that Yeshua's name literally was Yeshua ben Yosef. That literally is his name. His name is not Yeshua HaMashiach. That's not his name. That's his title. But walking around town, everybody knew him as Yeshua ben Yosef, quite literally. Yeshua, son of Joseph, who came as Moshiach ben Yosef, the anointed one, son of Joseph, the suffering Messiah. But back to our insight. It says, but whether people are considered either good or bad in God's scale is measured on individual basis, according to their own potential. Okay? Great people are judged more strictly than others because much more is expected of them. So what would be overlooked in ordinary people or even praised in inferior people may fall short of the mark when it comes to men such as the brothers or Jacob's sons. It is true that the brothers had reason to dislike Joseph. According to their own evaluation of their mission and his deeds, they had reason even to hate him. But their verdict was tainted by jealousy. Now, let's pause here and say, I've told people before, the reason, and this just, I don't have time to get into the deep dive on this, but just take my word for it. The reason that Jewish people today reject the Christian Messiah is because the Christian Messiah is the antithesis of Torah. The Christian Messiah, Jesus Christ, Jews will never accept Jesus Christ, by the way, ever. And nor should they, actually. Let me say that. Jewish people should never come to believe in Jesus Christ. That actually would be a disaster. But again, if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to us and we'll explain. But anyway, the Jesus Christ of the church is the antithesis of everything biblical regarding the Messiah. Okay, so going back to this this concept here, the Jewish people need to believe in the real Messiah. Let me reread what I was reading here. What would be overlooked in people or even praised in inferior ones may fall short of the mark when it comes to men like Joseph's sons. Okay, they were jealous of him. So what I was saying is that the reason why Jewish people don't believe in Jesus Christ today, right? Or let's just say the Messiah. Let's just stick with Yeshua. Is because he's been portrayed as the totally against the law of Moses, right? I mean, even Messianic Jews today, as I've said, what's missing from Messianic Judaism is Judaism. That's why it's, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I just want to speak Mr. Spock here, just plainly. That's why Messianic Judaism, in the eyes of real Jews, is a farce, because you don't practice Judaism. Okay, so that's fine. So now the question is, then why didn't the Jewish people believe in the Messiah back in the day. What was the issue then? Because he clearly taught about the Torah. Yeah, there was some discussion about whether or not you can carry your mat on Shabbat and stuff, but those are inner Jewish halakhic conflicts. Those aren't like, you're breaking the Sabbath. It wasn't the same. The answer is jealousy. And listen, jealousy is real. Jealousy is real. This is why you have to be careful what you put out on social media. I got a new car. I bought a new house. You have to be careful. Not that you shouldn't say those kinds of things, but there are a number of people out there who will just be jealous of the fact that why do they deserve a new car? Why did they get a new house? That type of thing. So anyway, they were jealous. And so here the brothers, the big sin of the brothers is jealousy. That's the issue, okay? So it says, and because men of their stature had no right to be jealous, God made them the instruments to bring Joseph to Egypt in such a heartless manner. Did you catch that? God made them the instruments. It says, to their lot fell the calumny of having sold their brother into slavery and causing their father 22 years of grief. Since it was foreordained that Jacob and his family go to Egypt, Joseph would have gone there anyway. But if his brothers had not fallen short of their ideal, Joseph and Jacob's tears would not have been on their hands. Nevertheless, though the brothers did not realize it, their cruel act was for a noble end. Because they were truly righteous people, they wanted only to do the right thing. Even their misdeed had a good outcome because thanks to them, Joseph was in Egypt to save the world from a famine and lay the foundation for the Exodus, which was to be the triumph journey to Mount Sinai. Joseph was the forerunner. You could make the argument. He was the Messiah Yosef, being the forerunner for the Moshiach David, who is Moses in type. So isn't this incredible? Yeah, did they sin by being jealous? Sure. But God put that on them. And in the end, look, we can say, let me give you a scriptural proof of why what I'm saying here is correct. You say, well, are you trying to say that God, I've been taught my whole life in church, Rabbi, that the Jews are going to hell and that God has rejected the Jews, Shantamaha, because they rejected the Messiah. And as a result, he chose the uncircumcised, pork-eating Gentiles to be now the new people of God who reject the Torah in its entirety. And he's happy about that, whereas before he wasn't. And you're trying to tell me now that the Jewish people, like this is a good thing that they did? Let me prove it to you. When the brothers finally come to realize that Joseph is Joseph in Egypt, when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, they're scared, and rightly so. They expect that this brother of theirs who they betrayed, who has all the power in the world, literally, at his disposal, is now going to take his revenge. And you know what happens? Joseph looks him straight in the eye and says, don't worry. Everything you did was God's will, and it was all for the very best. You betrayed me so that I could be sitting here today to save you and everybody else. And had you not done that, then I wouldn't be here. And he hugged their necks and kissed them, and they wept together. So you see, that's proof of what I'm telling you. In the end of the story, the Messiah looks at those who betrayed him and said, you were supposed to do this, and it was a good thing, so don't worry about it. It all worked out for the best. And then later, the Midrash tells us that when they take Jacob to be buried, Joseph stops at the well that they threw him in, and he prays at that well, and he thanks God for the well, Because had it not been for that well and that betrayal, then he wouldn't be the viceroy of Egypt and master of the world. That's a whole nother lesson that you and I can learn about that. Sometimes we need to go to the wells that we thought were our demise. We need to go there and pray and say, thank God for bringing me to this place. Because had it not been for this place, I wouldn't be where I am. There's an interesting insight of Ma'am Loez that talks about the brothers should have known that God was with Joseph because he wasn't harmed by the snakes or the scorpions inside, inside the well. Now I'm going to turn back to this insight here because let me turn here to Ma'am Loez. According to some insight, I'm going to read some highlighted points here from this transaction. Okay. Joseph was sold, according to other opinions, he was sold 5 times. Since the Midianites sold him to the public treasury as a state slave, and from there Potiphar purchased him. The Torah literally says the Midianites sold him to Egypt to Potiphar. First they sold him to Egypt to the state, and then he was sold to Potiphar. So now it's including now that the Midianites brought him down to, I guess, slaves are us, and they sold him to slaves are us, and then Potiphar showed up to slaves are us and decided to go ahead and purchase him there. Okay. Joseph's actions after he was sold seemed quite difficult to understand. Why did he not send his father a message or a letter? From Egypt to Canaan is just a 10 days journey. So why did he not want to send a letter? That's an insight for an interesting insight. We've talked before. And one of the answers that's given to that is that because basically he was letting God's plan unfold. So it says here, another part of the insight, God also agreed to the brothers because, talking about agreed to their plan, because this would cause Jacob and his sons to immigrate eventually to Egypt, fulfilling the decree that God revealed to Abraham that his descendants would be subject there. That is, otherwise, it says, Jacob would never have left the land of Egypt, certainly not to go down to Egypt. Goes on to say, our sages teach that the brothers had a good motive for selling Joseph to Egypt. They wanted to have a degree of dominance in Egypt before they became slaves there. Then, when they were enslaved, their subjugation would not be so severe. If Joseph had not attained such high status, the Israelites would never have been able to leave Egypt. Okay? So, in other words, there's a spiritual reason for selling Joseph. He kind of greases the skids in exile to make their exile a little bit easier. Okay? So what does the Moshiach do? He goes before us in exile. The first one to be exiled was the Moshiach. Says that we thus see that Joseph was sold a number of times. The Midianites and to the Ishmaelites, all of these served as a vanguard for the brothers. The intent was that wherever the Israelites went, their subjugation would not be so great. The Midrash says that God told the brothers, you sold your brother as a slave by your life. I will sell you into slavery. There will come a time when your descendants will say, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. To this very day, we say these words in the Passover Haggadah. So it says, as mentioned earlier, the selling of Joseph resulted in a benefit since it led to the eventual redemption of the Israelites. God was therefore pleased with their actions. Wait, this is what I've been talking about. God was pleased with their actions. This is what it means in Isaiah 53 when it says it pleased God to crush him. You know, how many times have the non-Jews said to me, have you ever read Isaiah 53? And my response is, Isaiah 53, is that in the Bible? My rabbi said never to read that. They tell me, have you read Isaiah 53? And my question back is, have you read it? Because you hate us for betraying the Messiah, and yet Isaiah 53 says it pleased God to crush him. What do you mean it pleased God to crush him? This is what it means. It means God was pleased with their actions. Why? He said that because of their deeds, they would someday be redeemed and be able to say, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, but God took us out of there. If Joseph had not been sold, we would still be slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. So you see here, the Messiah who brought us out of Egypt, the Messiah ben David, was Moses, but the Messiah who made it possible to leave Egypt to begin with was the suffering Messiah, Messiah ben Joseph, that is Joseph himself. This is why you need the suffering Messiah. The suffering Messiah makes the conquering Messiah possible. It says some sources relate that the entire incident somewhat differently. When Joseph was in the pit, he screamed and pleaded in a manner that made the flesh crawl. He begged his brothers and said, tell me what I've done wrong. What will you answer to God? How will you even face our Father? Even though I did something wrong to you, we are brothers. We are the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We were always kind and merciful. Joseph screamed so loudly, the brothers walked away from the pit so they wouldn't have to hear him. They would have come up with a plan to get rid of him. While they were plotting, an Israelite caravan passed by on the way from Gilead to Egypt. Seeing them, Judah said, why don't we sell him to the Ishmaelites? Basically. Isn't this amazing? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So we're out of time. I don't want to rush through this part of the sale because I think it's important to cover the various sales of Joseph and what it means prophetically with respect to Yeshua. And I believe I'm going to pause here, end our Aliyah, and cover this information tomorrow because I don't want to just skim over it. I want to go through it because it has a lot of meaning. So, end of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. I hope that the information here has been not just interesting, but revelatory for you. Enjoy your day today. Remember, it's a Rosh Hashanah of the Hasidim. Today is when we again begin the study of Tanya anew. And so we will be diving into that to one degree or another. Thank you again. May today be for you a great day. Blessings to you, Yochanan and Tirza. Enjoy your travel. May it be a travel in Shalom, and may your time in Paris be interesting and blessed. I look forward to seeing everybody mañana. Until then, have a great and amazing day.